Hello and welcome back, guys. All right, so the channel is almost reaching 10,000 subs. That's really awesome. Thanks to everyone that has subscribed so far. I really appreciate it. And thanks to those that have supported me on Patreon, even just for a single month. That's really awesome. I really appreciate that as well. So if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and help the channel grow. It really costs nothing. All right, so continuing on with our lesson here, we want to be able to submit our answers here and save in the database. This is the table we have created here already, and let's see how we can save that. Now, there are two ways to save this information. The current way we're going to do it is we're going to save each question in a single row and question and answer, and this will make us repeat our data a couple of times. So let me explain that a little bit. If I go to the browse, so for every question, it's going to have a user ID, a test ID, and a question ID there. Now the question IDs are important because they are different for every question, but otherwise the test ID and the user ID will be exactly the same. So this will be repeated information. And so we'll have, let's say if a test has 100 questions, we're going to have 100 rows of repeated user ID and test ID. Now this may not be a problem, but if you want to save, if you don't want your database to be so big, what you could do is use one row to save an entire test and question. So now the answer column is what will contain all the answers to all the questions, because this column is text actually, so it can hold any number of characters, any amount of text in there, including a whole document. So it's not really a big deal, but you have one row of data. And you won't have to repeat because user ID and test ID, and then you won't need the question ID anymore because the question IDs will be in here for every single question. You just need the test ID and the user ID. So one row. Now that's a good idea. That seems like a good idea, but you have to save the information here as JSON in this column. Now that may not be a good idea if you want to eventually begin to search through those answers. Maybe you want to find a specific question and the specific answer. You will need to retrieve this information, process it through PHP, meaning you change the data in here back into an array from JSON data, and then you search through that. So that may waste a little bit of time, but it will keep your database smaller. Now in our case, I'll leave it as it is because I want every question to have a row of its own. That's okay. In our day and age, we don't really care that much about too many rows. We care about speed of reading. So in this case, we want to read very quickly to a specific question if we want. And so we won't care about repeating the IDs here. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's see what information we get once we hit send. So I'll put an answer here. What is the process? I think this is photosynthesis, if I'm not mistaken. I hope that's the correct spelling there. Okay, so and then we, I want us to select this one right here. Let's see here. What a goat's code. Why did I not put a correct answer here at all? Oh, this is the correct answer. All right, that's good. Now, if I hit the save your answers, this is what I get here. So clearly, you see there's a missing ID over here. Number 3 is missing. So it's going to be like this because the questions are not going to be always in order. There may be sometimes other answers where questions were deleted, and so on and so forth. So these will not be in order, but that's not a problem because we have an ID here that will keep that order for us. So obviously we have a new table, so we must create a new model for that table so that all the complexity goes in here. And clearly we already have Wait a minute. Okay, this is the questions model. We need a answers model here. So let's see what's up here. Now the answers model will be much simpler than this, because we won't need to do quite a lot of validation at all, because we don't want to validate answers. Whatever answers the user gives, that should be the answer we take. So not too much validation there. I'm just going to copy everything in here, and that's from questions model, and I will create a new file in models, paste that, and we're going to call this one the answers model. So let's do that. Answers model. Okay, great. Just like questions model, let's go to answers model. Answers model. Very good. So let's look at the allowed columns in here by checking out our table. So in our table we have user ID. Now since we're going to supply these are not going to be created automatically, so we're going to supply these, so we need to put that as well. So user ID, test ID, question ID, and answer. Yeah, so back here I have user ID. I do have test ID here, so let me just put the question ID underscore ID, the date, of course, test ID, and we want the answer as well. Instead of correct answer, let's move that out. We don't need choices. Now it is possible that sometimes you may want answers to be in document format. Your students maybe need to upload a PDF or something like that. In that case, you can put a file column here if you want that kind of thing. I don't know, I'm not sure. Just let me know in the comments if you want us to include that. But for now, it seems like overkill, so I'm just going to leave that out. So we have answer. We won't need image at all. And so we save that, and this is the table that we are looking for is answers. Yes, so let's change that appropriately. Answers. Goody. Okay, so before insert we may want to let's see here. Now the thing here is that when comparing questions and answers, we want things to be exact. So let's say somebody types in an answer, let's say B, and then they accidentally leave a space there for some reason. We need to be able to remove that space so that when we do a comparison, those answers are similar when doing that comparison. So let's say let's make a function that will clean or trim spaces, something like this, okay, from the answer. So after select, we will want to get the user. Okay, so there's user ID, there's test ID. Now we're hardly going to be reading these answers independently of the test itself, so we won't need to get anything from the select once we do the select. So out of here, and let's look at the validation. Now there's really no need for validation here, because what we're getting is just an answer, and the answer could be anything. So this other data is provided through the controller, so in our case we don't need to validate anything at all. So what I will do over here is just remove everything here. It's completely unnecessary, but we'll leave these guys here in case we do need to add some validation later on. We can still add it there. And let's change these functions. So we want this one to clean its trim spaces. Yes, trim spaces, trim underscore spaces. And then we're provided with the data. Okay, so what data do we get? This is the data we are going to be getting right here. So what we want to do is go through the entire array and then whatever answers are here, we're going to trim the spaces. So we won't care what is set at this point, we just want to go through the whole process. So I'm just going to say for each over here and put data in there. So we have a key and a value. The reason we need the key is because we want to modify the original data. We don't want to modify what's in value here because that's pointless. This will be discarded the moment we leave this loop. So, but data will remain because that's what we are returning here. So I'm just going to say data and then put that key over there and say data key, whatever that key is, and say trim the value like this. Okay, so at least we have trimmed values there. That is good. Get user is completely unneeded. Let's remove that. Okay, so we have a functioning, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's make sure we are matching with our table. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesomeness.